the living world will come to us again and again with the medicine that we need. It's our job just to listen. Trust who's showing up. Trust what you're called to, because so much of working through this time of everything being shaken up is working our way back to self-trust. Hello and welcome back to Remember Why You're Here, a podcast for seekers and sensitives where you can relax, reconnect to yourself, receive, and remember the most important thing of all, why you're here. I'm Asia Suler, author, earth intuitive, and teacher. And in this episode, I'm gathering questions from the mailbag. So in this episode, I'm answering your questions that you've sent into me through my voicemail service, which is over at asiasuler.com/remember. That's where you leave me the voice note. And so these are listener questions that have been sent in. There's a really amazing diversity of questions here. And some of them are going to bring us into some interesting territory. So I'm excited to dive in. Let's go ahead and do it. This first question was a tender question that came in from a listener who is in the middle of a really hard time in their life and is looking for support and is specifically interested in working with flower essences. And so the question was, what flower essences do you take when your whole world has been shaken up? And I really felt this question so much in my heart because we've all been there. We've all had times in our life where like everything changed, times in our life where our whole life was taken like a snow globe and just shook. And it can be really hard in times like that to know what to do for ourselves. And there's this level in which we're actually not meant to know. We're not meant to have to carry that on our own or figure that out on our own. Like we're meant to be cared for by others, to have people in our community, our elders, our guides show up for us. And yet in the modern world, that isn't often in place. And so I'm hoping that my answer to this question will be that for you in this moment if you need it. Just be someone coming in with a gentle hand and just a gentle voice to say that you will get through this, you will make it through this, you will survive this, and that there is so much support for you. And that support, even if it's not there on a human level right now or not happening logistically in your life, that support is always there in the living world, in the natural world. That this earth wants to support you, the plants and the flowers are here to help you, and flower essences are incredible companions for any kind of journey, but especially the kind of journey where you're like, everything is falling apart. Flower essences are like, here we are to the rescue. We have come to do our work. So know that this is the perfect question to be asking of like, what flower essence can support me in this moment? And there is one flower essence that I recommend over and over and over again in moments like these, and that is Star of Bethlehem flower essence. Star of Bethlehem is part of the Bach Compendium, and it is a classic flower essence for everything that this listener just described. Star of Bethlehem flower essence is specifically for when it feels as if everything in your life has been shook up, when literally you have been shaken up by life. It is a flower essence for shock, trauma, and reorientation. So often, if I don't know what flower essence to give folks, this is the one I hand them. So if people are like, I don't know where I am, I'm disoriented, I don't know what's going on, I go to Star of Bethlehem flower essence. If there's been a charge that's been too big to process, which is the definition of a trauma, Star of Bethlehem flower essence. It is such a good, powerful, and in some ways fast-acting essence to help you come back into center, to actually call pieces of your soul back into your body so that you can meet this moment. My first experience with Star of Bethlehem flower essence was I had this book of flower essences and I had never bought one before, but I loved reading this book. I was so fascinated by flower essences and I decided to just open out a page at random and have that be the first flower essence that I purchased. And I opened up to Star of Bethlehem and I remember thinking to myself, like, that's not me. Like shock, trauma, I'm fine. Nothing's going on in my life right now. Like, I don't know what this book is talking about. But like something must have got in because I still went to the store and I went to go buy Star of Bethlehem flower essence and I picked it up off the shelf and I was just like, la-di-da-di-da. I paid for it. I walked out of the store and as soon as my feet hit the pavement, I started weeping, openly weeping in the parking lot of this grocery store. And I was like almost shocked while it was happening. I was like, why am I crying right now? But I had this slow rolling realization that even though there was nothing actually in that moment that was very intense in my life, I had just been through this huge shift and change in my life. I was just emerging from 5 years of chronic pain and infections. I had just left my partnership of 5 years. I had moved away from my community and my family to a completely different place in the country where I knew no one and was starting a whole new career and life path. And it just hadn't hit me until that moment that, yeah, there was like a too muchness that was going on in my nervous system that I didn't even realize. And it wasn't until I walked out holding that bottle in my hand that it hit me that, this is what I needed. I needed this kind of gentle support to help me reorient to the new reality that I'm in now. So I used to sell Star of Bethlehem flower essence as a part of my apothecary, and it was at the cornerstone of my practice for over a decade. So I thought that I would just read my description of this essence from when I had the apothecary because it really captures all of the reasons why I would recommend Star of Bethlehem flower essence in this kind of situation. So I wrote, Star of Bethlehem is one of the most important essences for releasing shock and trauma. Supremely comforting, this uplifting essence will help clear the reverberating numbness of traumatic experiences so that we can embark upon the next phase in our healing. Trauma can take many shapes. Star of Bethlehem teaches us to let go of judgment around the things that have shaken us and begin to release their grip from our lives. If you feel numb, unreachable, or stuck in a loop of feeling, Star of Bethlehem might be one of your most important allies. This essence is a powerful first aid in moments of panic, anxiety, and loss. When you don't know what to do, turn to Star of Bethlehem. Experiencing trauma is a natural part of being alive, but Star of Bethlehem shows us that we don't have to carry that charge with us forever. Nurturing and protective, Star of Bethlehem will create a cove of safety where you can come home to the wholeness of your body, heart, and soul. And the affirmation that went along with this essence was, comfort, hope, and healing surround me. I return to the wholeness within. So I took this essence when I experienced Hurricane Helene after I first went to my apothecary and had to take in its destruction, had to very literally physically make my way through, chest high muck in order to get into the building. And when I got out and was in a state of deep shock and trauma, literally, my body had gone into shock. I could at least access this tiny part of my brain that said, go home and take some Star of Bethlehem flower essence. And thankfully I had some at home because everything else had been at the apothecary. And it was so helpful. It was so profoundly helpful. So if you are needing just a handhold right now, if you're moving through a hard time, if everything feels like it's been shaken up or is falling apart, Star of Bethlehem flower essence is your friend. I also just want to say with this too, that I just want you to trust who is showing up. This is one of these things that happens when we have major upsets in our life, when we're in a time where everything feels shaken up. We also feel shaken in our own self-trust. Like we can't trust ourselves to know, what is the right thing for us or what is good for us, or we have this veil of, grief that feels like it's preventing us from seeing this. But I want you to also just pay attention to who is showing up. What flower are you delighting in right now? Did you hear someone talk about a flower essence on a podcast? And then your friend sent you that flower, or then you went for a walk and you saw that flower, or then it appeared in a movie. The living world will come to us again and again with the medicine that we need. It's our job just to listen. And so just notice, who is coming up for you and trust who shows up. This is you building self-trust in a way that is really important. So trust that. Trust who's showing up. Trust what you're called to. Trust if you want to just go into the store and run your hands over the bottles with your eyes closed and just be like, this one feels warm to the touch. I'm going to take that. Because so much of working through this time of everything being shaken up is working our way back to self-trust. So any way in which you can just trust yourself and who it is that's appearing to you, what it is you intuitively feel, what you're just drawn to in a way that's not logical. It just is what you're feeling, what your body's wanting to lean towards, what feels warm to you. When you lean into that, you're building self-trust again. And this is one of these definitions of trauma, is that we expected something was going to be one way and then it wasn't. And so it shattered our trust. And so building self-trust again through just trusting what it is that's appearing to you, your inclinations, your feelings about things, is really going to help you actually move past this time of numbness and disorientation. So those are the two things I would suggest. Star of Bethlehem flower essence and working on building self-trust again by just noticing who's showing up and leaning in and knowing that you can't get it wrong. Especially with flower essences, you cannot get it wrong. And you just trusting yourself to take this next step is a huge part of how the healing is going to happen. This next question comes from a listener named Ashley. And the question here was to speak to the medicine of invasive plants. So there's so much that I can say here. I want to mention that invasive plants, just if anyone doesn't have a background on what that means, invasive plants are any plants that are non-native to an area that tend to be aggressive, that tend to come in and take over space, that crowd out native species, that take over habitats. So invasive species is a big element of something that we're dealing with in the world at large right now, as globalization has happened increasingly more quickly in the last 100 years. We have a large plethora of invasive species who've moved into habitats where they have, either through their aggressive growth patterns or ways in which they inhibit the growths of others, taking over ecological niches. These plants have taken over parts of the ecology and have really shifted the ecology of the places that they've moved into. So that's what the definition of an invasive plant is. And of course, this is a big issue because native plants were designed and have spent a long time, millennia, learning how to be in harmony with one another, creating these ecosystems of diversity and reciprocity that tend to function and have natural checks and balances. When invasive species come in, there often aren't natural checks and balances on their growth. And so then that can cause this monoculture that then makes it so that other native species that are part of creating more diversity and habitat and food and niches within this ecology are pushed to the margins. So of course, this is something that for those of us who care deeply about the ecologies and the land in which we live, this matters to us. And there's a really big tricksterish energy in medicine to invasive plants that I actually think is really important for us to be with. So first of all, most of the plants that come to mind as the weeds that we eat or make medicine with, things like dandelions, cleavers, chickweed, most of these are not native to the places in which they're growing and being used. That it's often that these species that are the most invasive also carry deep and profound and important medicine. And so I think there's this invitation with invasive species to, instead of demonizing them, learn how to work with them. So for example, where I live, Japanese knotweed has taken over large swaths of creekside areas here. It's pushed out a lot of native species. It is a problem. And where I live, specifically the creek where I live, I've spent years and years and years trying to reclaim that habitat for native species here because it was so overgrown and choked out with this plant called Japanese knotweed. And Japanese knotweed is one of the few plants that we have growing here in this country that is specific for combating spirochetes. Spirochetes are the ancient bacterium that causes Lyme disease. And if you look at the growth pattern of where Japanese knotweed has grown into in our country and where it has, specific land bases that it has colonized, it has gone lockstep with the spread of Lyme disease. And this is just one of those mythopoetic things, right? Where while I am deeply invested in creating space for, advocating for, planting native plant gardens, supporting the flourishing of native plants, There's a medicine to invasives, and sometimes that medicine is not just the physical medicine, in which case for me it was, and now I have a practice of making a lot of medicine specifically for folks who are dealing with Lyme disease and giving it out freely in my community because it's one of these things that I'm really passionate about and it's such an abundant medicine. But that invasive plants can also turn our attention towards the things that we are here to learn about ourselves. Our relationship to invasive plants can really reveal a lot about our relationship to our own selves and our own being, because at the end of the day, plants aren't good or bad. Just like people are not like good or bad. People are people. Humans are humans. Plants, they just are. They were brought to this country for one reason or another, or brought to wherever place they're in, and they're just growing. They're not trying to take anything away from you. They don't have some sort of nefarious agenda. Plants are just plants. It's the stories that we overlay on top of them that really actually can reveal to us some things that we need to see and approach and be within ourselves. And this is something that I speak to specifically in my book, Mirrors in the Earth. So if this concept is intriguing or interesting to you, definitely get yourself a copy of the book. But I wanted to read this one passage because I think I probably said it a lot better in the book than I could currently summarize here. So here we go. The question we ask each invasive plant that comes into our landscape is, who are you to be growing here? Every time we direct this question out into the world, however, we mirror our own inquiring psyches, the part of us that is continuously, unconsciously pointing a finger within to ask ourselves the same question: who am I to be growing here? Many of us who struggle with self-worth can feel guilt for the space we take up in this world. For those who are intimately connected to the earth, this sense of unworthy belonging can even extend to our whole tenure as humans on this planet. When it comes to invasive species, humans are undoubtedly at the apex of the list. In fact, we're the reason why most invasive plants have been able to enter into non-native habitats in the first place. In light of this, many of us can't help but ask ourselves, who are we to be here? Normally, the tangle of these self-beliefs stays buried beneath our awareness until the knotted roots rise to the surface to be untied. If we simply shift the wording, it's easy to see how our repulsion to invasive species can act like a mirror, reflecting back to us the stories we unconsciously tell ourselves about our own essential being and sense of belonging. Just like I chastise and ostracize the parts of me that I deem unworthy, I often slip blindly into demonizing the Japanese knotweed that has grown into the creek. But then I remember something that stops my thoughts in their tracks, something I can't believe I ever forgot. This invasive plant once helped me heal from one of the most profound health challenges of my life. Whenever I remember this, the gateways of recognition, both inner and outer, flood open. Before we know anything different, invasive species are often our most beloved plants. For those of us who grew up eating honeysuckle or blowing dandelion seeds, these herbs are at the center of our most precious childhood memories and healthful connections to the earth. As an herbalist, these invasive species are the first medicines I turn to. They're both prolific and effective. I'm always amazed in the midst of my battleground in the creek to realize that I can hold such contradictory admiration and judgment for these plants, as well as for my own self. Coming face to face with my own cognitive dissonance, I recognize with awe that the very things I resist, within and without, always have their own medicine. And so there's this way in which the mirror of our earth is always reflecting back to us what we need to learn and what we need to see. And what if, the invitation here is, what if instead of feeling like we need to be in a battle with invasive species, what if we learn how to work with them? What if we learn how to be with what is while we continually stride towards what could become, to create more harmony and more balance while we learn how to work with what is? It's very similar to the invasive thought systems and beliefs that we have inside of ourselves. These things that feel like they ruin the ecosystem of our being. There's things that feel like they come in and they take away our health and our wholeness. When we resist those parts of ourselves, they just get bigger. So what if we approach them with kindness, with the desire to understand? I think when we do the same thing with invasive species, we create possibility actually for deep creation and connection. And yes, the creation of wholeness, of habitats where native species can come back. Because here's the thing, invasive plants aren't going anywhere. And the Earth's plan is much bigger, much longer, and much wider than we can conceive of in the span of our own lifetime. And in the same respect, the things that come up for us, the things that are hard, that feel invasive, the parts of ourselves that we're in battle with, they're not going anywhere either. They'll shift, they'll change. We can be in a better relationship with them. We can create more wholeness and more harmony. But the goal here is not to push away those parts of ourselves, but to learn how to be in connection with them, to see the medicine in them. And that, to me, is the ultimate medicine that we can receive from invasive plants, to come back into relationship with what is and move from there into a more harmonious future. This next question comes from a listener named Kira, and Kira just put this question so perfectly, so I'm just going to go ahead and play the clip from this voice note.
What do you do when you have a dream that feels like it's from the collective subconscious, that it's something deeper and it's not just about your life? Like, what do you do with those dreams?
So I want to name with this that we don't just have personal dreams. We dream for others. So I'm so glad that you brought this up, that we're addressing this question here. Dreams, as I mentioned in the episode, Dreams as a Bridge to a New Life, are remembrances from non-physical reality. They're remembrances of where we go, what we do, what we're connected to when we leave our body at night, when we are asleep, when we're in the spiritual realm, the realm of consciousness. And so dreams don't just bring back important information for ourselves, but they can also bring back important information for the collective. And this, I think, is really at the heart of dream practice for humans, that dreaming really at its heart is a collectivist endeavor, that in intact cultures, it's known and commonly practiced that we don't just dream for ourselves, but that we dream for the collective. We dream for the group. We dream for our communities, and we dream for the earth. And these dreams are taken very seriously in collectivist cultures. There are specific people who are often tasked with dreaming for the group, and anyone at any point who has a dream that is pertinent to the group is invited to come forward to share that dream, to talk about it. This is valuable sources of information. So if you have a dream that you feel is not just for you, a dream that you feel like was for someone else, or for a group, for a collective, for a culture, for the earth, the thing to tune into is, what is this dream asking of you? Dreams will ask something of us. If we listen closely, every dream has an ask of us. And that ask is often helping us to fully integrate the message of that dream into our lives, to realize what guidance is coming through. But I have found when there's collectivist dreams like this, that there's an even more specific ask. It may be to create a work of art. It may be to write a blog post. It may be to tell people about it. It may be to act differently in the world. But especially when we've been handed big dreams like this that feel like they're bigger than us, the way to approach it is to be curious about what is being asked of you and just to take that step. And often it's less big than we think of. Not the dream, not that the dream is less big, but the step we're being asked to take. That it's maybe something smaller than we realize, or it's something we could literally do today. It's not something we're going to work towards in a lifetime, but to chunk it down and break it down and ask yourself, what can I do today? What is the thing that this dream is asking me to do? Because when these collective dreams come in, it's showing that you are tuned in to the collective. You're tuned into the collective unconscious. You're tuned into the zeitgeist. You're tuned into the collective journey that we're on. And you are being tasked with something because you have this ability. And so ask yourself, what is the ask here? And what can I do to fulfill that ask? And I also just want to say here that sometimes it's a very concrete thing of I got to tell someone, I got to write an article, I got to make an altar. But I also want you to know that if you're working in the realms of consciousness, and this dream is coming up in the realms of consciousness, that you can also continue to work with this in realms of consciousness. So ask for another dream, create some sort of offering and leave it for the earth as a way to shift or bring what you realized into form. Start to get your creative cap on of like, how can I continue to work with the collective unconscious, even if I'm not creating an opus and putting it out into the world. Like, I have the ability to energetically work with the collective unconscious on a day-to-day basis because I'm a part of it. So, what can I do to bring this shift that I experienced or bring this dream that I experienced into the collective in a way that is helpful? You can meditate and imagine sending this dream to someone who might need it. Create some sort of offering on your altar and, create a space on your altar and bring offerings there. There's ways to work with this on a physical as well as an energetic level. And if part of the call of this dream feels like to be in a more like collectivist dreaming space, then think about starting a dream group where you're specifically asking that each of you tune into one another, tune into your group, tune in to the earth, and then share, come back and report your findings, report on, what you experienced and what came up for you. This is a really ancestral way to work with dreams, to dream in tandem, to dream inside of a culture together, to have times where you're sharing dreams with one another and where you're specifically asking to dream about certain things. I believe people who are sort of naturally vivid dreamers are often here to be dream healers. They're here to bring dreams in for the collective and to work with others in their dreaming. So if you're having some of these big experiences of dreaming, ask yourself too, what ways am I being asked to step deeper into dream work and into working with the dream realm? So if you're interested in more information about dreams, definitely check out that podcast episode, Dreams as a Bridge to a New Life. I also go much deeper into dream work in my class, Intuitive Plant Medicine. We go even more into how to work with plants and dreams, how to dream on behalf of the earth. So if this is lighting up something inside of you, definitely check that out. And know that your dreams always have these deeper purposes and meanings, even when they feel mundane, and that we are all connected to something greater than ourselves, and our dreams will show us that. This next question comes from a listener who had just listened to the episode Entering Your Earth Angel Era. Highly recommend that episode if you are a highly sensitive person or an empath. And this question just really hit at the heart of everything we talked about in that podcast. And so I thought I'd just play the question for you here before we jump in.
As Earth Angels, it's not our job to always say and respond to people in ways that make them feel comfortable and regulated. If you ever feel called to just delve into that more, I would just love to hear even more on your wisdom on that. It was so helpful and validating just to hear you speak on it.
I love the request to go deeper into this, the request to really answer this question of, if my job as a sensitive is not to make people comfortable all the time, then what is my job? And I want to name something really specific here, which is that for those of us who identify as highly sensitive and empathic, from a young age, there was often this impossible choice. And the choice was between authenticity or belonging. In an ideal scenario, we wouldn't have to choose between those two things. We could both belong and experience connection and be authentic. But for the setup, for a lot of us who are sensitives and empaths, is that there was some sort of choice point or crux within our families, within our communities, within our culture, where we were asked to choose to either be authentically ourselves or to belong. And the reality is, as a young person, as a child, we need to belong. We need to know that there is connection. Otherwise, we don't survive. Little human children don't have the skills that they need to survive. And so we will choose connection and attachment and belonging over our own authenticity. But this causes an incredible amount of stress in our system. And what ends up happening is that we learn how to be what people want and need us to be. We learn how to become like little comfort generators for other people. We're like, oh, you need someone to like listen patiently and kindly right now and, not have strong energy or opinions. I'll do that. Or, oh, you need me to come to your aid and to, whatever it is, like affirm you in this way and be super positive. I'll do that. So we learn actually that our role is to make people comfortable. And often we were doing this from a young age because there was some sort of instability around us, whether it was because, you lived in truly a very unstable or unsafe household, or there was instability because, one of your parents or caretakers was dealing with big emotions, big feelings, mental health issues. There's one level on which we ended up prioritizing being someone who regulates and comforts other people in their nervous system over our own authenticity. So if our job as earth angels, which is what I have come to call sensitives and empaths, if our job is not to make people comfortable, what is our job? Our job as adults is to learn how to be authentically ourselves again. Our job is to update our nervous systems and our connection with our own spirit to realize that the gifts that we're meant to bring to this world do not come from making everybody else comfortable and from choosing belonging over authenticity. Our gifts come from choosing authenticity and through authenticity, finding true belonging. We aren't children anymore, and so we don't need to forsake authenticity in order to find belonging, in order to make sure we survive. This is something we need to hear again and again and again, because it often doesn't feel like that. It feels absolutely terrifying to choose authenticity when it feels as if we're going to forsake what it is that helps us belong, to choose authenticity when it feels as if the love is going to go away. But this is what we're here to do. If we think about the archetype of an earth angel, which this is the reason why I love using this for sensitives and empaths, angels don't do what you need them to do all the time. They're not beholden to you. Their job is not to make you comfortable. Their job is to help you to grow and to flourish, for you to be on your soul's path. And this is the thing about authenticity. When you are authentically yourself, it gives permission for everyone else around you to be authentically themselves as well. And this is the goal of all of our lifetimes, is to be authentically ourselves. And through being our authentic self, finding true belonging. When we do this, when we start to let go of people pleasing, we break this pattern of using all of our life force to make other people comfortable, which is really just another way of enabling people to stay in the places where they have built grooves and patterns. When we let go of people pleasing, when we decide to be authentically ourselves, we start reclaiming our own life force to be used in the way it is meant to use, to be used in the way it's meant to change the world. And I want you to know that when you choose authenticity here, it's going to come up in your nervous system that this is dangerous, that like I'm going to lose something very major here. And any way in which you can companion yourself, to go for your comfort practices, to practice breathing, to name the feeling, to be with the sensations inside of yourself, that it can go a long way to just companion yourself in this moment and to remind yourself that the choice is no longer between authenticity and connection. The choice is, do I want true, real connection in my life? And if I do, then I need to choose authenticity. Because if we don't choose authenticity, we lose out on having true connection. True connection is between two sovereign beings who are willing to be seen and be known. And if you are not willing to be authentic with yourself, you're also not willing to be seen in a very true and real way. And so I really believe sensitives are here to be powerfully in tune with themselves and their authenticity, their bodies, the way they move through this world. And that when we come into our authenticity, that is how we do the groundbreaking, like earth-shattering, powerfully angelic healing that we're meant to do on this planet. It is through our own authenticity. And so that's the update. That's what we're here to do. To choose authenticity, and through choosing authenticity, come home to our true belonging. So if you identify as an earth angel or a sensitive, welcome. We're on this journey together. I have a program that is available all the time on my website called the Sensitive Series, where we go into a lot of this content of what it actually means to be a sensitive person, how to work with the magic wand of your nervous system, how in our lives we're actually meant to create these gardens of being and work with relationships in a way that it is actually nourishing for ourselves and our environments, and how when we come into tune with ourselves, we become like a singing bowl for this world, creating this resonance around us. And that happens when we really embrace the authenticity of who we are. So if you're interested in that program, the Sensitive Series, is up on my website and it's available at any time. And I would love to journey with you there. I also have a yearly program called Earth Angel School that will open again in spring 2026. So stay tuned for that if that deep calling is within you. And if you are sensitive and an Earth Angel, keep walking, keep doing the work, keep showing up for yourself, because the gifts that you have to bring to this world are so incredibly valuable. This next question comes from one of our absolutely lovely listeners and was so eloquently and beautifully put. So I'm just going to go ahead and play that question for you now.
I wondered if you had any advice about how to practice what you preach, because I can give all the advice and all the suggestions and all the tools to my clients, the women that I work with, lovingly, but I find it difficult to bring that to myself.
So first thing I want to say with this is we have to have self-gentleness here. All of us know things on a mental level before we know them somatically, before they're integrated into our lives. So it's super common to be able to be like, I give all the best advice to my friends, but I don't take any of it myself. Or I know exactly what to say to my clients, but when it comes to me implementing that in my own life, a little tough. So just first, self-gentleness here. Like, we can be really amazing guides for other people and still be working on this in our own life. So that said, it takes time for something that we know cognitively to land inside of our body. Our bodies are really our spirit guides in this lifetime. They truly are. They will guide us towards what we need. They are here to be like our spirit animals in this way. And our bodies work on slower timelines than our spirits, than our minds. And so the way that we bring what we know into embodied reality is to begin to work on body time. So one way to bring what we know cognitively into an embodied state, into our lives, to practice what we preach, is to work with the somatic concept of titration. So titration in somatic healing is this concept that when we want to embed new patterns in our body, to create new pathways, to, have our nervous systems come back into regulated states, we need to do it bit by bit by bit. It's like having to turn a ship around in deep waters. If we just tried to turn that ship all the way around 100% right away, it might break the ship. So instead, in order to turn a ship, we need to do it by little degrees. Well, our body is like that ship. We need small degrees. And so often when we want to implement something new in our life or make that shift, it feels too overwhelming for us to do that all at once. And so we don't do it. And so our bodies don't integrate that knowing. So in order to really practice what we preach, we need to lower our expectations of ourselves, and instead of trying to do it all at once, ask ourselves, what is one tiny step I can take in that direction? Or how can I move towards that just 5% more? Lean into that 5% more. And our bodies are on board for that. Our bodies are on board for the lean in, the little lean in, the 5%, the tiny step. And it really is the way that we make these big, profound, lasting changes in our life. And if you are a coach of some sort for anybody, this is really valuable information for you too, that giving people little steps, little doable actionable steps to take is how they're going to get all the way to the end of that journey, all the way into this new pattern, all the way into having what they know cognitively be embodied. Because there's this reality, especially right now in the world, where we have all the information at our fingertips, where we all kind of know everything cognitively. And if you think about on a spiritual level, how we're connected to all wisdom from all times, we all know these things. But the goal of our lifetime is to have it be embodied. And so really approaching it with this concept of titration, that slow is the fast way to go. That slowness is actually how we rewrite patterns in our bodies. Our bodies don't respond well to fast, overnight, immediate things. It's dysregulating. So if you want to create new patterns in your body, slow and steady and paced is how you do it. So sitting down and really writing out, what are the tiny steps I can take? If I could break this down into 10 little steps to get there, what do those 10 little steps look like? So for example, if you're like, I know that in order to write this book, I need to spend just an hour every day. If I spend an hour every day over the next year, I'll write this book. But that still feels overwhelming. What do? Well, what's the first step? Sit down and open the document. Sit down and open the Word document. Even if you don't do anything else, have the goal be, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to open that Word document. Or maybe it's, I want to exercise, but I just don't know how to get myself to do it. It's so hard. What's your goal for today? Maybe it's to put on your running shoes. Make that the goal. Don't make the goal to get out for a 5-mile run. Make the goal to get out and put on your running shoes. See what happens. Once you have those running shoes on, you might want to go for a walk. This is the way we update our body, is through gentleness, it's through slowness, it's through titration. And so, let this be your guidepost for yourself, and really embrace the self-gentleness to know that everything that you learn as a guide or as a coach or as a teacher is going to directly impact all of those who you guide. So the more somatically embodied these things are inside of yourself, the easier it will be for your clients or those you're supporting to have this start to become embodied for them as well. And I promise you, if you take it step by step, drop by drop, it will happen. The last question I wanted to address in this Q&A felt like a really beautiful continuation of that question. And this comes from one of our listeners, Amanda. And the question is as follows: how have you worked through the fear about letting yourself unfold, following your intuition? How have you worked with this fear of letting yourself let your purpose unfold? So we have these intuitions, right? We know that these things are what we're supposed to do or feel called towards it. We have this nudge, we take the leap. But then the stories come up, right? The stories of like, I should go back, I should do it differently, I should let go, I'm scared right now. So much of what I just addressed in this previous question around the titration and the slowness piece is really important here. The self-gentleness piece is really important here, to know that this coming up is not a sign that you failed or that it's wrong for you to have taken this leap. It's a sign that it's actually really important for your nervous system. Resistance is like a dog barking at the door. The dog is not going to bark if no one's there. The reason why the resistance is there is because you have made the change. You have made the shift. Something has landed within you. And so know that if you're having resistance or doubt come up, it's because you have taken those leaps. And this question of like, how have I worked through this fear? Well, there's a somatic answer to this, right? There's the somatic answer of literally being with the fear in my body, like literally taking a breath, feeling the fear inside of my body as a sensation, not as a story of, I'm afraid because of this, just as pure sensation, and naming that sensation like, this feels tight and constrictive. It feels like rubber bands around my heart. It feels like I'm being squeezed. And the more that I can just focus on the sensation of that fear when it comes up in my body and breathe into it, the more it starts to naturally dissipate and release. And fear is important. It's an important emotion to have. And all our emotions want is just to be felt, is to be experienced. So taking time somatically to experience that fear, to not always be in resistance to the fear or be wanting to push it away, but to breathe with it, to sit with it, to ask yourself, what is actually this fear showing me? What am I really afraid is going to happen? To get down to it, because we might say, oh, I'm afraid that, I won't be able to make enough money to support myself. I'm afraid that, my family won't want to be in connection with me anymore, or will be disappointed with me. But to try to keep going down underneath those layers. And often what we get down to is like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose love. I'm afraid I'm going to lose belonging. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my life. And once we can get down to like understanding what's at the base of it, we can start to meet ourselves in those fear and ask ourselves, is this true? Is this true that then I won't have love in my life? Is it true that then I won't survive? And often we find when we get down to that place, when we start stripping away the layers of the story, we realize that it's not true. That actually there's a lot of love available to us in life, that being alive, right, is so much more than having all these things that we think that we need. That like survival in part is being willing to say yes to what our soul is asking of us, that helps us to survive on a spiritual level. So finding all of these things can really be helpful. And then you build this muscle of self-trust in yourself and your intuition through being willing to follow your hunches, to take those leaps again and again and again. You're building that muscle. It's not going to happen overnight that you get the intuitive leap and you take it that one time and you go, oh, now I'm free forever from fear or self-doubt. It's built over a lifetime of taking those little leaps and seeing what happens. Taking another little leap, seeing what happens. Trusting your hunch, trusting them in very low stakes situations too. Which ice cream flavor to get at the store, which book to buy, which outfit to wear that day. Building self-trust through these smaller intuitive hunches, these smaller intuitive guesses, having a dream and deciding to tell someone about that dream who was in the dream and having them confirm, wow, that's really helpful. This all builds our trust in our own intuition and our own soul callings. And so then we have the strength, we have the inner strength and the muscle to just simply meet what comes up. And I mean logistically in our life, but I also mean the emotions that come up inside of ourselves, because when it's the right path, often those feelings of doubt and fear will come up. These emotions are within us. They're often from other periods of time in our life, and they want to be released. They want to be felt. It's just a charge that exists. And so when we build this muscle of self-trust, we can also trust ourselves to just companion ourselves in that emotion, to know that it won't swallow us whole. It's just asking to be felt. And that in feeling it, we release ourselves into the next level of really being able to trust where it is we're meant to go next. So this Q&A episode has been so much fun, and there are so many more questions that I didn't get to that we're going to have a part 2. We're going to have a part 2 of this episode because y'all have sent in so many good questions. I am currently on my sabbatical, which I've been loving. I'm so excited about. We have episodes scheduled for the rest of this year, but if you would like me to address one of your questions in a future episode, definitely head on over to asiasuler.com/remember and leave me a voice note. Let me know, what is your question? We will include it in a future episode. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your incredible questions. Deep gratitude for everyone who has left a rating or a review of this podcast. It means so much to me. It is more supportive than I could ever express. I'm just so grateful to be here with you all. I'm so grateful to be walking this path together, and through the questions that we all ask in our hearts, these questions that are leading us forward, really find the answer to that thing we're seeking, find the answer to that thing that is the most important thing of all, remembering why we're here.